Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Inner Circle. Today, we're looking at reduced size versions of the two icons designed by Gérard for Audemars Piguet and Patek Philippe, respectively. These pieces were introduced in the 80s and the 90s to somehow energize, to inject new life to the Royal Oak and Nautilus lines that were actually, if you can believe it, not this popular, not this overhyped at that period of time. Something more streamlined, something perhaps that was more aligned with the tastes of those years, those decades, which really leaned towards smaller, daintier pieces. Um, of course, such standards are never universal. Um, in our time, the jumbo versions of these watches themselves look quite fine. And that's not a surprise, of course, because they were initially designed as ultra thin pieces for their time, if also slightly oversized, as pieces that would straddle both ends of the spectrum, being quite sporty but also chic at the same time, carrying forward the tradition, in the case of the Royal Oak, of Audemars Piguet making fine, ultra thin dress watches and combining that with something more daring, more aggressive, even, and certainly sportier. Anyway, let's get into it. We're looking at 14800. This particular piece is quite nice because it has seen a recent overhaul by the manufacturer and it is still sealed in that box. We are hurting for aesthetic detail, but I have um, just in the background saved an example, which happens to be in beautifully patinated gold as it happens, but you will understand the piece's aesthetic a lot better this way. 14800 is a 36 millimeter reduced sized version of the Royal Oak, but it is presented on a leather band instead of the integrated bracelet. And the case construction, too, for that matter, is a little different in a way that can't be retrofitted to an integrated bracelet. It has a nice clasp, which at the closure echoes with the contours of the octagonal bezel, which I really like. Of course, once again, this is not the actual model we're looking at as a value proposition, but I wanted you to get a better sense of the aesthetic. What I wanted to say about this particular version of the 1418, the 1418 I've always thought as um, a counterpart to the Royal Oak, as the Aquanaut was to the Nautilus. And this military dial execution with its oversized and radially placed Arabic numerals, as well as its broadsword hands, its arrow tipped sweep center seconds, really seems to live up to that promise. It's something quite distinct from the jumbo, certainly, and from most other Royal Oaks that you see on everyone's wrists. It's Usually comes on leather bands, but I'm sure, especially through someone who makes custom straps, you can do something quite interesting. I think the black dial is actually very nice on this one. I like again how it's distinguished from everything else out there, especially when it combines with the 14800. This is something that is straight out of the manufacturer, back from a service in that sealed box, and by a professional dealer out of the United States. It is presented on Chrono 24 with the buy it now option at 18,500. They remain open to negotiation, so you might be able to get a better deal by sending in your offer. Next up, we're looking at the integrated bracelets counterpart to it. The 14790 is perhaps the trustiest, most well known, and most popular reduced size version of the Royal Oak over the years. It was introduced in the 90s and stayed in production, I think specifically in 1992, and stayed in production until 2005. And it offers a wealth of options in terms of the combination of materials, dial colors, and patterns. I think it presents a particularly good deal in the two-tone execution, which is the 14790 SA or SA, 36 millimeter in diameter compared to the 39 millimeter of the Royal Oak, quite proportionately shrunk. Um, Even the taper of the bracelets is quite delightful, and the thickness in either case not overbearing at all. The original jumbo has a thickness of 7 millimeters. 14790 is only 7.5 millimeters thick. So even then, you don't have much of a problem. You have the same petite tapisserie pattern on the dial, which is that blackish blue or night blue. And this is a three-hander compared to the Royal Oak Jumbo, meaning that it has also a sweep center seconds. I chose this particular example not necessarily because it's the cheapest, but it is in great condition, rather well preserved, and it also happens to be a full set coming with its original certificate as well as the warranty papers and the octagonal presentation box. This is the AP Royal Oak 14790 SA from 1993 with its original box and papers. Classic dial color with a nice patina and in a two-tone execution from 1993, listed by a professional dealer out of Belgium for 25,629 in US dollars. But you should feel absolutely free to send in a bid and see if you can work out an even better deal. Next up, we're looking at Patek's reduced sized, mid-sized version of their jumbo, of their Nautilus. The 3800, reference 3800, was introduced in 1981 and remained in production until the 30th anniversary of the model in 2006. Again, it came in various metals in a number of different executions and numerous dial options, but I chose the most classic one. To be frank, if I can be frank and honest with you, I think this piece has better proportions than the original jumbo, and it also similarly to the 14790, it has sweep center seconds. So for some, the way it sits on the wrist, the way it is executed, the way it's designed and proportioned might actually make it a better choice than the Nautilus. Of course, I'm talking about your choice for your watch. These are the terms that we talk about watches at the Watches and Style channel. We're not talking about which one will quote unquote retain better value or which one would be a better investment. Simply that 3800 might look better on your wrist than 3700 or 5711 or whatever it is that they will come up with as the jumbo, which is currently available as 5811, but only in white gold. This particular example has the classic horizontally ribbed gradient blue dial with the date indicator at 3 o'clock, which has a white background and a rather stylized font, which I feel looks quite out of place. That's one thing I could never get over when it comes to the Nautilus, but that's a minor gripe. The Patek Philippe Nautilus 3800 is 7.5 millimeters thick, which is actually slightly thinner than the original jumbo. And compared to the jumbo's 42 millimeter diameter, it is 37.5. Otherwise, it's in so many ways retains all the kinds of attraction that the original design has. These used to be an incredible value proposition before the hype. Things have, of course, changed, but relatively speaking, they are still, compared to the 3700s, at a very attractive price point. In this case, we're looking at an example that was listed on Chrono24 by a professional dealer out of Germany for the reduced size Patek Philippe Nautilus, a reference 3800 in steel. That Buy it now price is 55,826, but the seller remains open to negotiation, so you should absolutely feel free to try to work out a deal that is better aligned with your budget for this watch. My pick of the litter has to be the 14800. I rather like the military dial with this version that is presented on a leather strap. I think it's a distinctly different feel than any other Royal Oak, and therefore somehow could have a place in a collection that also aspires to have something like the 14790 or even a jumbo, especially a jumbo. But I think all three watches that I shared with you today gives you interesting points of entry, interesting reference points to lean on that pun should you wish to explore the reduced size for these iconic designs. Thank you again for supporting me. Thank you so much for your contributions. If you have any questions about these particular listings or any watch related questions whatsoever, please feel free to reach out to me by writing an email to me at lordhellespont5 at gmail.com. That is lordhellespontv@gmail.com. You can, of course, find me on Instagram at young.brando, and you should absolutely feel free to send me a line here on Patreon whenever you would like. Signing off right now. I look forward to seeing you soon. Until then, take care.